The GIMP is used for editing raster graphics, that is, ordinary bitmaps. Inkscape is used for vector graphics. This is an equivalent to CorelDRAW. In the world of Windows graphics editing, there are these two big players, CorelDRAW and Photoshop. In Linux, at least a part of their functionalities are covered by Inkscape and GIMP. Inkscape is primarily used to create all sorts of symbols, trademarks, or logos. If you need to be able to scale and resize graphical objects without losing image quality, Inkscape will prove useful. The standard SVG can be employed for images designed for websites, because it allows the website to be rescaled and displayed in any size. A logo or an image created in Inkscape will always be visible with the same amount of detail. As we mentioned, Inkscape is the equivalent of CorelDRAW. The comparison between Inkscape and Corel will give similar results, as it's the case with GIMP and Photoshop. The comparison between Inkscape and Corel will give similar results, as is the case with GIMP and Photoshop. In the case of vector graphics, user expectations are usually smaller. A situation where some user is frustrated because of the lack of some functionality will happen much less often in the case of Inkscape. Unfortunately, Inkscape has the same flaw as GIMP. It doesn't support CMYK. There are many tutorials that help you get to know the full potential of Inkscape. One of these tutorials, containing much useful information, is available on the page shown in the slide below. Inkscape, like GIMP, is available for Windows. The currently available version has a relatively low number, 0.46. Please don't be discouraged by this, however. It's a well-developed tool and it can be used for professional purposes. By the way, you can see how different version numbers can be depending on whether it's Windows or a Linux version. In Linux, it's not uncommon for fully functional applications to be described with very low version numbers, such as 0.12. This means that the developers still want to add many more functionalities to the application. So applications continue being published in the beta version for a long time. Inkscape's been released with the version number 0.4x for many years now. Tools such as Wine, which we'll talk about later, reached version 1.0 after 15 years in development. Therefore, don't take the version number too seriously. In contrast to Windows, here the version number doesn't really represent the current developmental stage or functionalities that the application offers. We'll now quickly present some of Inkscape features in practice. Unlike GIMP, this application is by default displayed in a single window. It's not difficult for a user to find the function they need. As mentioned, Inkscape is used solely for vector graphics. All objects created in this application will be based on mathematical expressions. For example, a straight line is not a set of points, as it is in Photoshop or Paint. In this case, it's a mathematically calculated connection between the beginning and the end. Thanks to this, you can draw straight line and curved lines in any form. We'll use a functionality called Bezier Curve. This tool allows you to create curves between given points. Holding the left mouse key, you can freely shape the curve. Using these curves, you can draw virtually any shape. Straight lines are drawn in a similar way. This underlying principle is applied to all other objects. Any object created in Inkscape is a vector image that can be scaled and resized. People who are familiar with vector graphics will master Inkscape very quickly. The interface is intuitive and available in different language versions just like GIMP. In contrast to Dia or Kivio, the translation is professional, and even a person who can't speak English will be able to use the program.